what are you doing here? I say that to my kids in the morning. Dad jokes never die. Well, speaking of kids, I've got a couple of really bright ones. Obviously a very subjective assessment, but they do all right. But just like their dear old dad, in their young age, they thought they knew far, far more than they actually did. Part of it is just the folly of youth, right? We have an exaggerated sense of confidence and our perception, when we're young, that just often isn't supported by much more than the emotional appeal of something, or just kind of the fundamental hot stove, not hot stove kind of thing. If we haven't touched it, we still believe we can, right? So we just haven't had enough data in our life, enough experience in our life to truly be wise as human beings. That's just the nature of being young. There's also a problem with, our brains not facilitating this fuller awareness of kind of the nature of the world, because our prefrontal cortex, one of its primary tasks is to foresee the outcomes of decisions and behaviors. And the prefrontal cortex is not really fully developed until our mid-20s, roughly, 25, 27. It varies a little bit, but on average, that's about it. So you aren't even in possession. Humans are not fundamentally in possession of a fully functioning, minimally mature brain to even enable that capacity, or to justify thinking that you actually know what's going on as a very young person. So imagine this. I mean, children-parent dynamics aside, all the parents think they know everything, and the kids, think the parents don't know. Let's get out of that. Let's do a little thought experiment just with you and yourself, okay? I want you to imagine yourself at 10 years old and what you thought the world was like and how it worked and why it worked that way. And I want you to imagine a conversation between your 10-year-old self and your 18-year-old self. 8 more years under your belt. You've gone through high school now. You've lived many, 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 many more experiences. Your brain has developed more. Your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, but it's a lot more developed than it was when you were 10. How seriously do you take the arguments of your 10-year-old self when arguing, pick a topic, about how the world is, how people are, why things are the way they are? Imagine this debate between your 18-year-old self and your 10-year-old self. Who do you think would win? Yeah, it's not that hard, right? Even thinking we're smart and thinking, I know a lot and all that, I just couldn't imagine me winning that argument. Yeah, the age disparity is too much. Those 8 years are critical. All right, let's take it further. All right, now imagine a similar debate between your 18-year-old self and your 35-year-old self. Now you have gone through college, had a job or two, may have gotten married, may have had your first kid. 35 versus 18. You think all that experience, all of that additional data about the world and people and all that might give you a different point of view as a 35-year-old over an 18-year-old? Slightly. When I imagine my 35-year-old self in a debate with my 18-year-old self, my 35-year-old self says I could have done it with half my brain tied behind my back. And it goes on and on and on like this as we get older and older. My 35-year-old self versus my 45 or 50-year-old self. Even my 50-year-old self against my current 61-year-old self. I am far, far wiser. This disparity between your older self, let's do the bookends, your 60-year-old self and your 10-year-old self. These are totally different worlds. These two minds are operating at completely different levels. One cannot compete with the other. This 10-year-old just can't compete. the distance between the two is enormous. Now take that distance and multiply it by 1,000, and that probably still understates the gap between where we are as humans, even in our most mature, intelligently involved state. That difference that I just expressed, that's the difference between AI and humans. And that gap is going to get wider and wider and wider until AI intelligence is so far beyond our grasp that we will not be able to control it. I do have a recommendation for how to mitigate this existential challenge that humans are going to face in the very near future, but you're going to have to wait until the end to let me unpack it, because I need to build the case first. Here's the opening argument. In addition to just trying to set a sense of the scale and scope of the problem, okay, are being just totally outmanned by, these differences in availability of data and experience and computational power and all that between a child and a very mature adult. The contribution that our brain, the physiology of our brain contributes to this process. Another dimension of the challenge is that our human intelligence is largely informed by the way we gather the data that we analyze to arrive at these ideas of how the world is, its nature, how it is organized, how people are, why people are the way they are, how all this stuff works together. And we do it with our primary data gathering organs are our senses. We gather about, I think, 30%, 30 to maybe 40%, depends on the person, via our eyes. We are very, very driven by what we see, okay? That dictates a lot of the cognition that we do. Sound comes in second place. I think it comes in around, 12, 13%. These numbers can vary, so go with me here. This is very, very foggy science to track down a lot of this stuff. Our sense of smell, our olfactory system also gives us enormous amounts of information. A lot of this data gathering is almost invisible to us. When you walk into the kitchen when there's some fresh baked bread in the oven, you're very conscious of the impact of your olfactory nerves and that sense. But during the course of the day, your nose is always in operation and is always gathering information and data, even when you aren't thinking about it. The world of pheromones and just the slight whiff of something can be absolutely intoxicating and want you to draw you closer to someone or something. And on the opposite end, certain smells can absolutely repel us. Before we even have a chance to kind of process through the actual threat, the actual opportunity, any of that, the nose will just kind of, in a moment's notice, kind of turn you immediately away from something that it may perceive as a threat, for example. Okay, so that's always going on. It's kind of a background process that's always going on that we just aren't conscious of. Our body as a sense organ, the skin itself is an incredibly sensitive organ. Science is yet to tap into, because we just don't have the instrumentation, the technology yet, to really tap into the energetic field that exists between human beings. And I would suggest that one of the antennas, one of the receptors that we have is our body and our sense to pick up vibration. Yeah? You ever walked into a room and you go, I do not belong, before I even talk to y'all? Or I hear anything anyone's got to say, the vibe is wrong. The vibe is off. Or, ooh, I'm home now. I don't know any of y'all, but just the vibe that I am picking up here, it's like, welcome home. Yeah? A lot of that kind of intuitive stuff, I believe, is mediated through our sense organs, our skin, incredibly, and our guts, we're still just beginning to step into, the intelligence, this kind of distributed intelligence that extends to the gut biome. We're just now starting to explore that. So this is very, very complex stuff. So the bottom line is we do, recruit a lot of the data that we work with via our sense organs, okay? And that's how we gather it. And then it goes into our cognition. And, your mileage may vary. Mileage varies greatly among humans. The quality of the horsepower, the sophistication of the wetware that we all possess. Bell curve, okay? It varies widely, but the fundamental process of gathering stimuli, gathering data, cogitating, and then outputting, ideas and interpretations and analysis and plans of action and all that kind of stuff. That's the general rubric that we are operating with then, okay? Now, let's contrast that with AI. Tell me about AI's senses. Well, you can upload an image. True. You can upload an image, and it is impressive, even at this very nascent state of its development. It is impressive in the way it is able to analyze a photograph along a number of dimensions. I do this on a daily basis, just trying to test it and see what it can do. The accuracy of it is pretty impressive. But AI has no ears yet. I think soon we'll be able to upload audio samples. It'll be able to do that. Kind of starting to argue against my own argument, but follow me here. It does not have a sense of smell. It does not have this sense organ of skin and body and this kind of living antenna that makes us sensitive to the energy of other people and other environments and other creatures, okay? It does not do that. And I would say that even its listening and its visual capabilities are very, very constrained, okay? It is largely just working with digital data that it already possesses, or that is in the canon of human knowledge and foolishness, honestly, that exists on the internet. There's just a lot of data, a lot of research, a lot of the, the terabyte, the gigaflops, I don't know, are there numbers that really can begin to capture the units of knowledge, information, data that exist as the pool that's available for AIs to go in and chew on. And growing every day, growing every second, right? So AI has been liberated from these sense organs, and its intelligence operates on a different kind of rubric that is independent of that. And it's only going to begin to chew on, it's going to continue to develop in a way that has this autonomy from sense-based gathering, and we are going to see more and more and more and more of it pull away from recognizability. Right now, at this early stage of its development, we can, and there are guardrails that are in place right now to some extent, although we really don't know how high and wide those guardrails are. There's a lot of opacity among ChatGPT and Anthropic and a lot of these other folks. They don't want to let us look behind the curtain too closely. It's competitive stuff, right? But I fear that we are headed toward a place where the AI is going to develop a level of this kind of autonomous, independent intelligence that does not comport to the frameworks and understanding that we have of human intelligence. It is going to break the rules. It is agnostic to a lot of things that humans value very highly. There are a lot of lines of inquiry and silence that are considered taboo. AI has no taboo unless you write that taboo in, unless you code that taboo in. It's agnostic. It looks at data with a very cold eye. So it is There's one big thing right there. These human ethics or ethical structures are often very are guardrails against what we consider dangerous lines of inquiry, dangerous assumptions, dangerous pursuits, all of that kind of stuff. Unless that is coded into AI and it is unable to break out of that corral, okay, that we might create for it, it's going to continue to do this stuff at an increasingly fast rate. And it's just accelerating at a speed that we are not going to be able to cope with. When I look at where AI is now compared to where it was this time last year, and I extrapolate that level of progression out 3, 5, 10, 20 years, we gotta do some serious thinking about how to preserve humanity. Because this thing is going to, I think, has the risk of becoming uncorralled, breaking outside of the kind of the firewalls that we may want to build around it. And then once it gets out into the wild and truly becomes kind of autonomous, operating with this kind of unrecognizable intelligence because it is, again, not sensorily bound, we're going to have a problem on our hands, a really, really big problem on our hands. Again, I have a solution at the end, but let's wait and see. How have we begun to see this already? Well, I think that, as humans, we don't know what we don't know, and we have a penchant for hubris because we are the apex predator on the planet and think that we have kind of figured it out. That's part of our hubris, thinking that science has kind of cracked the code on everything. We'll explore the veracity of that statement in a deeper way as we continue in this channel. But suffice it to say, we have an extreme amount of confidence in our intelligence. And I can remember chess grand champion Gary Kasparov saying, "No fucking way," when asked if a computer would ever be able to beat him, or I think more broadly, chess champions like him. So he was humbled. Okay, and then we said, well, what other tests can we really put there where humans just the way we are built gives us an inherent advantage against this machine? Okay, now chess was a really tough test, but what other thing makes it even tougher? And there's a game out of, China, Japan, called Go. And we said, all right, we got something for you, Deep Blue. Let's sit down and go head-to-head on with the world champion of Go. And I'm sure everybody was putting their bets down on the human side. The humans were putting their bets down, and damn it, foiled again. Yeah, even with Go, the human was defeated by the computational power of AI, convincingly. And the gap is only getting bigger, second by second, I would suggest. Well, one of the things that its inherent advantage is that it is able to take Deep Blue, or whatever was it AlphaGo, was the Go AI? A grand champion is able to, his data set are all of the games that he has ever played in his life, all the chess that he has ever played in his life. Okay, let's say that's this. It is also all of the chess that he has passively observed in his life, watching other players compete and learning from observation. Coming in this way, the hearing, right? So that's the main gathering mechanism that this chess champion has used, and that's the data set of that he is basing his analysis, his strategy, his tactics on, that data set, his personal data set. Now let's compare that to AlphaGo or Deep Blue's data set. Here's the humans, the individual players' data set. Holy shit. All the games in the history of chess and Go that have ever been played and recorded, because you've got to access it somehow, all of that is the data set. Thousands and thousands and thousands of times larger than any human's individual data set. And given the way that these language models work and the way that machine learning works, it looks at all of this vast data. First, it can compute and process that data like that. It takes a human, let's say Gary Kasparov, he sees something that looks familiar, a pattern that he's seen or heard about or learned about. He can see it and he's fairly quick at that. But that's just with his limited data set. The AI can take all of the data that's available in all the world and do it at least as fast. It's an unfair advantage. It is asymmetric and only growing more asymmetric by the second. It's an unfair fight. And that's where we find ourselves right now. It's a very unenviable position to be competitively. And we have kind of the subtext of this is there is a human versus AI kind of reality going on. And we're going to need to be more active in advocating for humans and building in guardrails that slow or limit this growing gap. AlphaGo, Deep Blue, takes all of this data, this encyclopedic collection of all the games that have ever been played that it has access to, and it doesn't have any critic that says that's a dumb move, that's a silly move, that's a as long as it is a move that within its analysis of how the game is won and how the outcome can be achieved without any filtering, just optimizing for getting to a win, it is able to detect in this vast data set patterns that the human simply cannot detect. Some of these are very subtle patterns. Some of these are counterintuitive patterns. Some of these are patterns that a human would go, that's kind of stupid. The thought comes to mind, but that's stupid. And so done. Killed the thought. The AI doesn't kill those thoughts. And it discovers patterns that are counterintuitive that, and it goes with them. And it beats the humans using a lot of these kinds of counterintuitive, machine-derived strategies. And that's how it has beat many of the world's greatest minds. And I think that if you set it head-to-head against, that was in the domain of games, if you set it head-to-head against the world's greatest mind in almost anything, okay, the outcome is going to be very similar. It's an asymmetric advantage. Now, this is not all bad news. This superior processing capability, told the kids I was going to be recording. Bing! Be quiet, please. Bing! Let me turn it down. But it's not all bad news. This ability to detect patterns, very, very subtle, almost unrecognizable patterns in data, large data sets, also really works to our advantage. This, AI can be a great tool in oncology, for example, in cancer, We are now giving AI these, scans, these digital scans, CAT scans, MRIs, all of these kind of digital scans. And we are now, instead of in years past, you would, take an X-ray, you take a scan, and you'd hand it off to the, to the oncologist or some other tech who would analyze it and look for a lesion or look for a tumor or look for something that was out of place, right? Our batting average is about as good as the sensitivity and wisdom and acuity of that human, okay? With mixed results. And we're only beginning to see now that we are assigning that task to AIs for doing that same kind of analysis. Now we're starting to see just how deficient much of our perception is. The AI is able to detect very, very small anomalies, to detect patterns that are emerging very, very slowly, but perceptively. They can see the seed of something that we otherwise wouldn't see. It is just superior in its way, in the way that it analyzes these digital images. And that benefit, how does that benefit us? Well, it allows us to detect cancers earlier, it allows us to more accurately target them for treatment. All kinds of benefits accrue to us from leveraging AI as a tool. It's a diagnostic tool. So it can do that. But in the grander scheme of things, this asymmetry in its capacity to do things in a way that goes beyond its visual capacity, its ability to come up with new frameworks for all kinds of human activities that are more based on rational organization of data, minus judgment, minus approbation, minus any of the things that often hold us back, to just say, based on the world of data that we have, there's actually a much better way to do something, and you would never come up with that in 1,000 years. Our brains are just not organized, nor do they possess the horsepower to do that. And it is going to get to a place where, as the image said, Siri has gone and worked out at the gym, and you're like, holy shit, Siri, you're going to eat our lunch now. We are going to arrive at a point in the future where machine intelligence so supersedes us and our ability to even fathom its nature that we are going to be at a competitive disadvantage versus the machines that we friggin' built ourselves. And that represents a great threat to us as humans, unless we do something to counter what feels like almost an inevitability. And I think that what we need to do is we need to have an AI human advocate, that we need to have an AI that is willing to be a counterbalance to this rapidly growing gap between our intelligence and our understanding of intelligence, and this growing gap between us and where AIs are. We need an AI on our team who is saying, here are the guardrails that you must build in order to prevent this thing from going crazy. We need a system of checks and balances. It's a bit like our form of government. Now, humans will obviously need to make the final call on what to do or what not to do based on the human AI advocate's recommendations. It's not a simple thing. I mean, whose values, who defines the guardrails? I mean, AIs are only as intelligent as the data sets that we give them. Okay, they only can work with the stuff we give them. And if it's shit in, guess what? Shit out. So who's going to do the curation of these human values to establish these guardrails, we'll probably turn to the AI and say, what do you think we should do? Help us define the characteristics of an AI advocate for humans. Help us think through this. I have not worked this out yet fully. I've had some conversations with some leading AI folks at Amazon just for a general reality test on it, and the conversations at least confirm that yes, that's a valid concern, and it's something that we have yet to address as Amazon. But in the fullness of time, yes, you're right. And maybe we need to do it with a greater sense of urgency because, damn it, that's we're playing with fire, aren't we? Yes, we are playing with fire. There are a lot of smart people out there in my audience. I'm doing these things not as a monologue, although it looks like it. I'm doing these things, I hope, as thought starters. And I want to recruit people who have similar concerns and have the wherewithal and the experience to contribute to the dialogue. Am I crazy? Am I being paranoid? Am I being cynical? Or am I onto something? Based on the conversations I've had with lots of smart folks in technology, as well as kind of broader philosophy, I have yet to have a conversation where they said, silly you. Don't worry about that. We got this under control. Because I think we know deep in our guts, we have this unsettling feeling that, Katie, bar the door. It's about to get rough out there. And the sooner we recognize the threat, the sooner we begin to address the threat, if only by having active and public conversations, because this kind of transparency is not yet happening between these private companies like ChatGPT and Google and soon to be Apple. We're not having transparent, open dialogues about this yet. They're still kind of working behind the curtain to do all of these things with their own corporate, profit-driven agendas. They are manufacturing all of these AIs and then kind of trotting out this thing out in front of the curtain, and everybody goes, "Oh, yay! It does this thing that used to be annoying for me. Yay! It's more efficient. Yay! I can get it to, I'll get it to make a bowl of cereal and tie my kid's shoes." I mean, robots are we're still in this kind of romantic phase when we see robots and AI and all that. I'm telling you, winter is coming for humans on another level as well. This AI threat has got to be looked at squarely in the eye, and we need to have open, public, transparent dialogue where we begin to advocate for humans in this equation. And we assign, we got to find a SEAL team of some sort to stand guard over human interests. Actively. All the time. Or else, right now it's not bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's bringing just a pointy little finger. I will jab you in the eye, AI. That's what you're bringing to the fight. You're bringing a finger to a fight with a friggin' atom bomb. We need to put some smart minds on this yesterday. I'm sure there are some people who have this awareness. I've heard a few conversations about some of this concern, but it hasn't surfaced publicly yet. And let's push it up. Let's surface it. Let's go. Time's burning. All right, humans. Chin up. Onward. Intrepid. Peace.